Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. A white man in Virginia allegedly harassed and evicted minority tenants, then stole their identities to continue receiving rent relief benefits from the government.
A Hampton landlord is accused of threatening, defrauding, and attacking his tenants.
A federal grand jury returned an indictment against David Merriman, who owns more than 60 properties on the peninsula. Sarah Hammond joins us in the studio now with the details, which we have to warn might be disturbing to some of our viewers. Sarah.
Well, in this indictment, the Department of Justice alleges David Merriman attacked his tenants with tire irons, shovels, and chainsaws. He repeatedly used the N-word and even threatened to kill some of them. In this 51-page federal indictment, a Hampton landlord is accused of fraud, threats, and civil rights violations. 58-year-old David Merriman owns more than 60 properties on the peninsula, renting primarily to low-income African Americans susceptible to homelessness. The indictment returned by a federal grand jury outlines the alleged racist and threatening comments to tenants. We spoke to Joseph Robertson back in 2021, who lived in one of Merriman's homes when former Attorney General Mark Herring filed a lawsuit against the landlord. He claimed Merriman repeatedly called him the N-word and harassed him.
Different threats, different racist slurs, one thing after another, There's always something with him.
Something the federal prosecutors allege is a pattern. They say Merriman hit a tenant in the face with a shovel and attacked another with the blade of a chainsaw while it was off. The indictment goes on to allege he told one tenant to, quote, clean the house like when you were slaves, even threatening to kill some of them, according to prosecutors. The indictment goes on to say from around 2015, Merriman defrauded his tenants out of money by renting rundown homes and making false promises to fix the problems. Problems like rotten floors, leaking sewage, mold, and rat infestations. The document also alleges Merriman forged his tenants' signatures and lied about the state of the homes to receive rent relief and housing assistance benefits that he was not entitled to. They say he obtained a significant sum of rent relief without telling the tenants, all while evicting them for unpaid rent. Now, this is not Merriman's first controversy. In May of 2022, U.S. Marshals arrested him for allegedly failing to pay his employees of his landscaping company thousands of dollars. And as I mentioned, in October of 2021, the Virginia Attorney General's office sued Merriman for systemic housing discrimination, alleging, quote, horrific treatment of tenants. Back to you.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Now, Merriman faces 10 counts of wire fraud and 4 counts of interfering with housing rights, among other charges. He's currently being held at the Western Tidewater Regional Jail.
Now, in this series of alleged disturbing incidents, 59-year-old David Merriman, who owned rental properties in Newport News and Hampton, Virginia, allegedly rented to black people who had limited credit and housing options and looked to exploit those people by putting them in properties that were in poor conditions and even in some conditions were considered to be uninhabitable because they had leaking sewage and rotting floors. And as he rented these places to black people, he looked to charge them upfront payments in the form of prepaid rent and security deposits. And as those people paid him these prepaid rent and security deposits, this is where David Merriman would participate in alleged harassment of these individuals as he went out and put eviction proceedings on the same people who were on the brinks of homelessness. Now, as these people were basically trying to get their lives together, what David Merriman would do that is reprehensible is basically go out and promise them a place to stay, then work behind the scenes to yank the rug out from under them, and did this as he was going out here making racial slurs against these black people, making threats to them, and also going out here and making comments about slavery, and in some cases telling people to clean up the residences they were staying in, like the slave quarters on a slave plantation. And as he was doing this and looking to evict these people during the COVID-19 pandemic, David Merriman would go out and then take the information from the black people who were renting homes with him, and then as he was looking to evict them, look to take their information and use it to apply for rent relief benefits using their identity. And even if the tenant couldn't pay rent, he would take their information for rent relief benefits, and then look to use that information to get the money before evicting them. Now, as David Merriman was out here participating in this series of disturbing crimes, he again was out here abusing black people. I mean, there was one case where a woman basically was in the hospital, and what he did was take all of her belongings, throw them out of the home, and then had her car towed while she was hospitalized, and also was harassing and intimidating people to the point where they were getting restraining orders. And as this was going on, people reported him to the federal authorities, and as the federal authorities came in, what they did was do an investigation and found out that he participated in several federal crimes, including wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and race-based interfering with housing. And recently, David Merriman was pleaded guilty to these charges and may possibly be on the road to a serious sentence coming up. Now, the FBI and the feds basically see this as a case of an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of David Merriman's behavior, it definitely fits the pattern and profile for a white supremacist, and fits the pattern and profile for a white supremacist who basically is living in his own delusional rose-colored reality, where he believes that he can go out here and oppress black people the same way that the slave master did during the time of slavery in the antebellum South. And what David Merriman basically wanted to do with his 60 properties is make it like it was going to be his own version of the slave quarters, and make an environment similar to that of the slave quarters, where he would go out here and look to foster a paternalistic and codependent relationship with black people, where he believed that he was going to be like the slave master in a deified position, and in that deified position he was going to have people, black people, basically staying on his property and looking to use his property as a way to leverage power and control over those people, and tell those black people that they had to accept whatever he gave them as related to the squalid conditions of his 60 decrepit properties. That's what David Merriman was looking to do. He didn't look to respect black people as human beings, and he deliberately targeted black people basically because this beta male in his rose-colored reality wanted to go out here and look to replicate the slave plantation. He basically thought because he had all of this property, he could use that property to create a secret world where he would have all of this power over black people, and look to create an environment where he could be the one who could go out here and abuse black people the same way that the slave master did. That just shows how depraved this white man was as regarding the lives of black people. He just had any love for any black person, and wanted to create an environment where he could dehumanize black people, similar to the way that the couple I talked about in a previous video took several black adopted kids and basically put them in a place where they thought they could make them live like slaves. Now, this is all part of a disturbing group of people who basically want to see black people at the bottom of the world, and even further than the ghettos of the hood. These people want to take black people back to the dark days of slavery, and want to take black people back to the dark days of slavery where they can feel a sense of power of breaking a black person down. And that's what David Merriman, I believe, wanted to do. He wanted to have power over black people, and he wanted to break black people down. And that's why he was, again, giving black people squalid homes, and as related to renting them, and then looking to look to leverage power over those people with campaigns of terrorism, with racial slurs, and these comments about slavery. And he wanted this to basically pay off for him, and he basically wanted it to pay off for him in two ways. He wanted it to pay off where he could go out here and get the money from those black people, and saying that their money really had no value whatsoever, because what he valued was the ability to go again exploit these black people who are on the brink of homelessness and in a vulnerable position. He wanted to go out here and take advantage of this situation so that he could be able to get his jollies as related to having power over black people. And his way of getting power over black people was to try to, again, terrorize these black people, put them in a state of fear and anxiety, and look to humiliate and degrade black people. This is what this monster wanted to do. This is what this sack of garbage wanted to do. He wanted to, again, use his property the way the slave master did on the slave quarters. And it just shows how sick and twisted some of these white racists are. It just shows how sick and twisted this person is. Here you have a man with a whole 60 wealth building assets, and instead of looking to build that property into something that could generate wealth for him and his family, what this depraved deviant wanted to do was use that property as a way to gratify his deviant ideas as related to power. And that's what shows how evil this sick piece of shit is. This sick piece of shit, basically, what he wanted to do was go out here and, again, get his jollies as related to power. He wanted to go out here and break black people down. That's what this monster wanted to do. He wanted to go out here and break black people down and believe he had the justification to do so, all because he was white. And because he was white and thought that he had privileges given to him in the system of white supremacy, as he was abusing these black people who were on the brink of homelessness, what this monster did was think that these black people had no sense of humanity. And because he thought they had no sense of humanity, he thought he had the right to go out here and basically take their identities, and like the slave master, thinking these people were property, thought he could go out here and apply for all sorts of government benefits, thinking the government would go along with his scheme. However, as he continued to go on with this scheme, what happened was that the FBI came along. The FBI came in and did an investigation. And as the FBI did its investigation, eventually they began to see a paper trail as related to his pattern and practice of housing discrimination, and a pattern and practice of basically looking to exploit people as related to many of his other businesses, because he had a landscaping business basically where he didn't even pay his employees wages, because again, he had this view of people that he didn't see them as human beings. No, this man is again a sick and depraved individual who basically, as I see it, has some sort of God complex that many of these white supremacists had during the days of slavery, because during the days of slavery in the antebellum South, you would have these racists who believed that they were basically God in their own minds, and because they believed that they were God, they believed that they could just do whatever they wanted with people's lives based on their whims. And that's the same type of mentality that I believe David Merriman had as related to his whole business, and because he wasn't looking to again build wealth for himself, because he basically at this point had made so much money that money had no value to him, and all he was thinking about now was about getting power. And the way he thought to get power was not about economics or politics. It was about sating his whole deviant ideas as related to power. And these deviant ideas basically were he was looking to take the ideas he had in the secret world and transpose them to the real world. But as he was looking to fabricate his own interpretation of the rose-colored reality he imagined as related to black people being slaves and other minorities being broken down, and him having to dictate whether you get to live or die, what happened with David Merriman is he basically got on the radar of people who reported him to the authorities, and as they reported him to the authorities for not paying employees their wages, and also willfully and intentionally terrorizing black people and exploiting black people, this again sack of crap basically was arrested and charged with a 50-plus page in federal indictment, and basically has had so much irrefutable evidence against him as related to things that eventually he was forced to plead guilty to all of these charges. And this racist basically is going to go from having a big house to going to the big house, where he will eventually meet Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And as he meets Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles inside of the big house, he will get what he exactly deserves, as they basically show him the same mistreatment he gave black people, and he reaps what he sows, later than what he sows, greater than what he sows, as they trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, off-brand fruit punch, off-brand lemon lime drink, off-brand grape drink, off-brand apple juice, Fritos chips, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand vanilla wafers, off-brand ginger snaps, Hunt's snack pack puddings, packets of tuna, packets of beef, packets of chicken, packets of soy sauce, packets of sriracha sauce, Taster's Choice coffee, lemon candies, peppermint balls, hot fire balls. I mean, he's going to be screaming with great balls of fire as Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles go out and give him some summer sausage inside of the permanent housing of Cell Block D. And as he's getting stuffed with hot beef summer sausage in Cell Block D in the front side and the back side, and basically getting turned out by all of the inmates, Mr. Sprinkles will come in, and eventually what he's going to do is look in the eyes of this white supremacist before he sprays him with special sauce in the face and the backside, then turn him around, call all the dudes in Cell Block D to check out his handiwork, and as they go out here and check out his handiwork, once he splits them cheeks open and they look at his backside looking like the inside of a Louisiana crunch cake, this is where this dude will basically finally get the justice for the way he basically did black people dirty, as Mr. Sprinkles and the gang basically get a good laugh at showing this racist his backside looking like the inside of Louisiana crunch cake and making this man pay for all of the evil that he has done. This man, again, is a monster all around because he just has, again, a whole depraved view of people, a completely depraved view of people similar to that of the slave master. And basically here we have, in 2024, going on 2025, a man who wants to take black people back to the days of the antebellum South, and that's what makes him a special brand of evil, because here is a man who had wealth and resources, and instead of using that wealth and resources the way God wants us to do, to help out our fellow man, what this demon wanted to do was basically use his wealth and resources to break down black people, humiliate black people, and make black people feel less than human. And that's what makes this guy basically a sick piece of crap, because it was all about him sating his deviant fetishes for seeing people in fear, sating his deviant feelings about seeing people in terrified at the fact that he was going to be the god over them. And it was all about him looking to go out and humiliate people This is what makes him, again, a reprehensible human being. And I wouldn't even dare to call him a human being at this point. He's just a sack of garbage. And again, a sack of garbage that deserves any sentence that he gets. Now, they say he may possibly get 20 years in prison, and I'm hoping that the judge will give this monster the maximum. I'm hoping the judge will give this racist monster the maximum and let him know that the way he is behaving is not the way a civilized society operates, because people in a civilized society do not operate like this. No, civilized people, again, when they have wealth and resources, they use it to help other people, and they use that wealth and resources to help other people improve the quality of their lives. That's what interdependent, healthy people do. But codependent sociopaths like this, and this is my opinion of this man, he is a sociopath because he has no regard for human life, no regard for humanity, no, basically wants to fit people into a world that he feels will be smooth for him. That's what makes him a complete monster as a man. And again, a man who basically will be getting everything he deserves when they give him that sentence and send him straight to the permanent housing of the penitentiary. Now, this was a story brought to me by one of my viewers, and if you want to bring me a story to talk about, you can send a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App, and if that story is one that I believe would fit into my themes of Season of the Simp, or the man crisis, or the woman crisis, I will make that video for you. And if you want to learn how to identify the behaviors of toxic individuals like this, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, and it'll go in depth on all the behaviors of these individuals, on how to identify them so that you can avoid this type of individual and avoid getting into a codependent, violent situation with one of these sick and depraved individuals. And you can find The Man Crisis on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.